Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's Doctor Design program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
You've discovered your link to GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast. Now, here's your host, GoPowerCat.com publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Insiders podcast. It's exciting. Tim Fitzgerald, Matt Walters, Ryan Catfish Black, and Travis Tannehill. It's a crew. And we all can see each other this week, and Ryan Black showed up, so that's good. But you know what's really good? We're sponsored by Blue Mark Energy. Blue Mark Energy is a natural gas products and service provider serving feed yards, hospitals, hotels, manufacturers, and school districts throughout the Midwest. And Blue Mark Energy is the natural gas provider for the Kansas State campuses in Manhattan and Salina. Blue Mark Energy, K-State owned and K-State proud. Boys, how was your weekend? Hopefully it'll be the last slow college football weekend we have this year, but I suspect there's more hijinks to come from COVID-19.
Start with Catfish, because Catfish wasn't here last week.
My weekend was fine. Like I mentioned before we got on the show, I watched a tremendous amount of golf, because it's such a crazy year in so many ways. The fact that there's now going to be 6 major championships, between now and next August. So, the U.S. Open, which would have been, earlier in the summer now was over this past week. So I enjoyed watching that. I did watch, in and out some of the other college football games. UCF Georgia Tech was really the one that I got to watch probably the most of, because I was on desk Saturday night, so I didn't get to watch as much as I would have liked of Miami and Louisville. And then obviously, I'm still, following all the other sports, NFL and, NBA playoffs now, or Final Four. So, overall it was a good weekend for me, but like you certainly mentioned, I'm ready to be back, back to work this week. Hopefully, knock on wood, the game doesn't get postponed between now and then.
Yeah, Coach Kleiman just announced another 10 players are either out with COVID or contact tracing. It's adding up, guys. I don't know, man. They might get to midweek, and if they have more cases or more guys that have to go into quarantine, Trav, I don't see how they're going to play.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the numbers are just adding up. And my biggest question, why – and I've racked my brain around this, and I haven't been able to come up with a good – thought or a good thought process behind it. Why is the NFL having 0 throughout the whole entire NFL, and these college teams are struggling? And obviously there's college students on campus, but I guess that would be my question to you guys is why is it such a drastic difference? The NFL's handling it, exceptionally well, and college is still struggling and games are still getting canceled. What are your thoughts behind that, everyone?
I will turn to our medical professional, Dr. Matt Walters, for this.
Yeah, I wish. I don't know if it's a case of NFL's being a little more mature about it. Guys are getting paid lots of money, hopefully making good decisions. It's not the prettiest of scenarios right now, and I think we're going to see start and stop football all year long. We've seen a couple games get postponed or whatever within 24 hours of kickoff, and who knows? Oklahoma was hit pretty hard with COVID during the summer months. To be honest, I've not seen what their numbers are like right now, but there's various pockets of teams that are not faring very well at the moment, and K-State's one of them.
I don't understand it, Travis. I don't see how it's possible, knowing that how infectious this has been across the nation and how it just, gets into groups and starts spreading. I don't see how every team is staying this healthy. One theory going around is that they're using that the test that people are using is so sensitive, there's a lot of false positives, and they're using better testing. I don't know. I just can't explain it, but they're having a great deal of success. And I know it's easier. I accept that it's easier to convince a guy getting paid $1 million a year, you got to be careful you're not getting paid, as opposed to a college football player that wants to go drinking on Saturday night after the game. I grasp that, but I find the disparity in the numbers absolutely hard to explain, and I can't wrap my mind around it. So I think there's more at work, and I hope someday we find out what's all been going on here, because I can't explain how there's so many cases in so many places, but not the NFL franchises. It's crazy.
Do you think they're cooking the books? Do you think they're lying about the numbers?
I think they're ignoring asymptomatic as healthy. That's just my thought is, and there's some thought there isn't a classification for asymptomatic, that it's actually false positives. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I don't see how mathematically, I'm better at math than anything else, how mathematically this could even be taking place, that they can be that healthy in college football, can have so many cases and contact tracing cases where there's quarantine. Have we heard of anyone in the NFL actually quarantined because their wife was around someone that ended up COVID positive at a swimming pool or something? We haven't heard of one contact tracing quarantine. I find that to be very curious.
Well, I do know that I read a story, maybe I guess it was from ESPN, about like a lot of these coaches in the NFL, especially the older ones. They're basically isolating out of caution, just saying that we already know that we're high risk. So you always heard the joke about coaches sleeping at like the complexes, but I've heard like a lot of them aren't even going home because they're just trying to avoid, infecting their family or vice versa. And again, I know for some people that sounds crazy, but when you're getting paid the money that the NFL coaches are, I guess, hey, you still keep in touch via FaceTime and Zoom and what have you. My explanation for it is I think kind of what you guys touched on. I just think, one, I think I'm not going to say that the NFL numbers aren't, maybe like you're saying, maybe they're ignoring certain ways of reporting it. But I do think they've looked at how many players in baseball and how many teams have been affected there, that I think they kind of see, well, hey, we don't want to have similar issues here if we can help it. And secondly, I think it's just that I think no matter how many times you maybe stress to college students about practicing safe, practices and following the guidelines, I just think it's easier in theory than it is in application. And I just think look at the schools that have let fans and things in the stadiums. I'm sure you guys have seen the photos. There's like half the fans seems like aren't even wearing masks, or they're down here or something. So I just think that I'm not at all saying it about K-State. I'm just saying that in general, I think that guys just get comfortable. And I also think that they're just going to be in contact with so many more people on a daily basis than an NFL player, right? Because in a way, in NFL, you're just going from the facility and back. Whereas, unless you're taking all online classes just here in a college town, you're going to be around a lot more people on a daily basis than an NFL player is going to be.
Matt, has the COVID cases in the Major League Baseball ranks calmed down? They have, haven't they?
It's come down. I'd say a fair amount. Back to what we've been talking about. College rosters are a lot bigger than NFL rosters. I don't know if the testing that's going on at the college level is different than the testing that's going on in the NFL, but it's, and even though that's happened, it's you see, trying to think of what the school was over the weekend. I saw a story about a player having a friend bring him a pizza from outside the bubble and, got suspended or booted off the team or whatever. It's just mind boggling to me, all this stuff that's going on. And, and now we're talking about the Pac-12, the Big Ten are still going to start football. I saw a story over the weekend. Pitt State here in Kansas from the MIAA is going to go play Stephen F. Austin in November. So it's just, as they say, the story, or how did Chris Kleiman say it? It's fluid and unavailable. It's unavailable and fluid are the two key words that you're going to hear all season long.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now we're left wondering, out of the 10 new cases supposedly Kansas State has, who are they? How important, how significant are they? Guys, I think K-State's got to be teetering on the brink of not being able to play at Norman. They had so many cases to get more of them. I know they got back some players, but are they in game shape? I mean, just because you come back, if you've been gone a couple of weeks, what's that mean? Are you ready to play by that Saturday? And if they have more as the week progresses, I think the Wildcats have to be teetering on the brink of declaring no contest, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this keeps happening and how guys continue to put themselves in peril by, doing things or being around people, but that's the world in which we live right now. Trav, I mean, you're the closest to being on the field of any of us in your lifetime. So, I mean, how difficult is this for guys as college students, to kind of edit their own behavior so that they're not doing things? I know it would have been really hard for myself. It really would have. Yeah,
no, I definitely understand those players and, trying to be as disciplined as possible. But then it's not just the players, it's the players' girlfriends and the players' roommates that may or may not play football, and everyone that's surrounded by them, has to be smart and looking forward to, the Norman game or, games in the future. I mean, if you're a coaching staff, I think you really got to, when does it become unhealthy, not just COVID unhealthy, but like physically unhealthy for me to put in a true freshman left tackle and a left guard and get my guys killed because they just have no shot to be prepared, no shot physically. They weren't supposed to be playing this year. They were on the docket for 2 or 3 years down the road. So I think those decisions kind of have to weigh in, and you hate to, throw up the white flag and surrender and say, hey, we don't have a shot. But at some point when your numbers are so depleted, you might not have a shot. So with some of this COVID stuff too, because Coach Kleiman has been pretty open and transparent on injuries, especially prior to the prior regime. Has he not said any of the COVID cases? Has he said who's been released? Or is that more of a nationwide? Are some teams announcing who's out, or kind of what's that protocol look like just from a health standpoint?
Well, I think some schools are announcing who's out, but you really can't release the name of someone with COVID under the HIPAA laws. I understand that, but I mean, they've just really gone into Bill Snyder shutdown mode. No reason to tell us, no reason to tell their opponents, no reason to signal that they were short on receivers last week or maybe linemen this week or, who knows, running back. There's no reason to send that signal, I think. He's gone into Bill Snyder mode, ironically, but it's probably best for his team and his players with so many guys coming and going that everyone in the league doesn't know who's going to be on the field. I don't blame him one bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you're down one wide receiver. You obviously know, we got plenty that can step up. But, yeah, if your whole wide receiver, your whole defensive back room is struggling, that can definitely affect the game plan for the offense you're going up against. So, I mean, it does make sense, but it's just ironic to me, so quickly how he's shifted from being pretty transparent, pretty open on the injury depth chart to, this year, extreme circumstances, obviously. He's changed that tune relatively quickly.
I'm just astonished at the number of cases right now. I'm not sure Baylor's ever going to play. I mean, between them and opponents, this is amazing. They lost 2 different opponents 2 weeks in a row, one because of them and one because of Louisiana Tech. It's amazing. And then you brought up the Big Ten. Matt, they're talking about going 8 games in 8 weeks, plus the following week is a championship week in which everyone will play. From the little experience I have so far in 2020, that plan isn't going to work. I mean, you got to have a week there to have a reschedule if something pops up, but man, going 9 straight weeks, I feel like the Big Ten president set that plan up to fail.
I don't see how it's going to work. You think of all the conference commissioners, Bob Bowlesby from the Big 12 catches more guff than probably any of them. But I'll tell you, the amount that, the Big Ten commissioner has been getting here for the last few weeks has just been immense. And I think they've just been pressured back into playing a little bit. They're not going to play 9 straight weeks. Not every team is. Just like in the Big 12, not everybody's going to get all of their games in. So, I don't know. Back to what you were saying, Fitz. I don't know if K-State is like right on the brink. I think there are a couple of places where they're really concerned. But my bet is that the ones that have recovered and are back, the ones that are now having a quarantine or what have you, it's almost like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And, kudos to those that are taking care of the cats. The medical staff, they are being incredibly cautious and for good reason. And the potential issues with, the test that comes back for your heart, those are the ones that, nobody remembers that even being talked about until the process really got rolling. And that's the one thing that probably everybody medical-wise is most focused on is that test result and the potential for damage down the road.
Well, Nebraska got its way, has football, Ryan Black, and yet now Nebraska isn't happy because the schedule's too mean to them. Did the Big Ten intentionally stick it to Nebraska? They have to open at Ohio State. They have to play Penn State early in the schedule. They really caught a tough schedule. And honestly, I find it hard to believe it was by chance that they have to open at Ohio State.
Oh, I think you would be hard-pressed not to think that the Big Ten schedule makers didn't purposely do it that way. I would say that, Nebraska can't really complain now in terms of they were as vocal as any Big Ten team about wanting to play this season, and now you're getting to play, so you gotta roll with it from now. I would say, Matt, I don't know. I mean, again, maybe Bowlesby got a lot more criticism before I got here, but man, Larry Scott, the Pac-12 has been just an utter disaster, and he seems to get flack all the time, and most of it's been deserved. Like I don't know if we did like a power rankings of most flack for Power 5 conference commissioners, but he would be number 1 on my list for sure. Just in terms of
the Big Ten catching up quickly, but I agree. Larry Scott's caught a fair amount of it. It's just like their football games, though. We don't really see it or hear it because it happens 2 or 3 hours later.
Well, and I didn't want to be that guy just saying that Pac-12 doesn't play, and being the only Power 5 league that doesn't get started. That it's like, well, they haven't been at all a factor in the playoff in years. Outside of the year Oregon made it to the title game and lost to Ohio State, and that was the first year of the playoff. That was 6 years ago. So I do think Oregon is kind of building something again out there, but I just think that, like you kind of mentioned, Fitz, it just doesn't seem, given all the stuff we've already seen that's happened, that there's just no way they're going to be able to play that many weeks in a row without some cancellations and things coming into play. So I think what'll end up happening is you'll see they'll do like maybe what they might have to end up doing with baseball, where they just go by winning percentage. And I know that'll make a lot of people mad, saying, maybe this team played 7 games and this one played 5 or 6. But there's no other way you're going to be able to do it if every team doesn't play the same number of games.
Yeah, Trev, that's interesting. Should there be a baseline number of games you have to play? I'm of the belief that if Ohio State beats Nebraska, Rutgers, and Maryland and goes 3-0, and that's all the games they get in, the playoff committee will want to put them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this year more than ever, they're going to be open to criticism. Normally we're dealing with no losses or maybe a 1 loss or maybe a 2-loss team, but yeah, this year it's going to be wide open. I think that eye test is going to be super important. The healthiness of key players, whether that's quarterback, running back, big name wide receivers. So yeah, this year is going to be super controversial, honestly, and I'll be curious to see how they can even handle that objectively, because it's not going to be possible. They're going to have to put a ton of opinion and a ton of unmeasurables into that decision on who they pick for that college football playoff.
Matt,
I'm glad you brought this up because, to me, what is fascinating about that is, like you kind of mentioned, at least every year we have the baseline of a team can play the same number of conference games outside of when if your conference has a title game. But like now, again, you might have it where, Alabama plays 9 games and maybe LSU plays 6 and Florida plays 7. And so, like, how do you, like I said, then when it comes to judging that against the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the ACC, how do you do that? It's just going to be complete chaos. And I think the only team that's going to be happy about this season is whoever wins the national championship. Everyone else is going to say, "Oh,
you're right."
An asterisk. Season really
giant asterisk. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, after the break, we won't talk about the Pac-12 returning to play, which they're considering, because nobody really cares. It's amazing. Nobody. It's like, oh, okay, Pac-12, whatever. Yeah, you're gonna try to play. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, have fun. I mean, nobody seems to really care, and I don't think the Pac-12 will play. They just won't be able to get a consensus on it. We'll be right back on the PowerCat Insiders podcast, sponsored by Blue Mark Energy.
The PowerCat podcast will be right back.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify is here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
We now send it back to the PowerCat podcast.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Insiders Podcast, brought to you by Blue Mark Energy. Does your company or your employer spend $4,000 or more a year on energy bills? Would you like to reduce those costs by 25% or more and maintain the same level of service and reliability? If so, it's time to speak with Blue Mark Energy. Blue Mark Energy, K-State owned and K-State proud. Tim Fitzgerald at home. Travis Tannehill at home. Matt Walters at the office like a responsible adult. And Ryan Black has joined us this week after taking last week off for a meeting, which I suspect was NASCAR replays, but he's back with us, and that's good to know. A little warning here, folks. I had to retape this open because my mic failed in the second part of this podcast. The good news is we had it backed up on Zoom. Because of that, my mic will be off of my computer instead of this actual microphone, so it sounds like I'm with Matt Walters somewhere in a well. But if you can get through that, this podcast will continue, and we do have Ryan Black, and that's always good.
Yeah, we're going to have to get a rant. You better have a rant. We missed it last week. Ratings plummeted without a rant.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That means he doesn't, so just put him on mute for the rest of the show.
Well, I was going to say that I just thought, in the interest of just so much stuff going on in the world, it would look very, I don't know, inappropriate for me to be overly upset about something that, doesn't look that looks so minor in comparison, right now. And I'm not trying to
I get it.
Weasel out of it. I'm just trying to kind of put forth a reasoning.
I get it. Did anyone
I'm trying to keep things in perspective right now, I'm happy that I have a job given just how many places have just hacked their journal, their news staff to death. And I mean, I'm thankful that I'm healthy. I mean, they're just, I just understand that these things are just so crazy right now. It's hard for me to be.
Who says you're healthy?
Yeah.
No, who says you're healthy, Ryan?
Oh, well, yeah, that is more of an opinion, I guess.
Oh, okay. You're healthy from the shoulders up is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mentally, I'm as strong as an ox. It's everything else.
All right.
That's the problem.
No. I've been watching these Zooms where they there was the table reading of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we should break into Hamilton songs as we tape this, seeing everyone. I don't have any idea how they're doing that, how nobody had a delay. Anyhow, speaking of delays, Oklahoma State delayed a week, ended up playing against Tulsa. Did anyone see any of that game? I was busy most of Saturday, and what I saw was limited and putrid. I know Oklahoma State's quarterback Spencer Sanders got hurt during the course of the game. I know their backup stunk, but that football game was awful, what little I saw. It's awful.
I recorded it, did not watch the whole thing. Usually when you talk about Tulsa and Oklahoma State, you're talking about some points being scored. I just think that I don't think people should be surprised by what they've seen so far. And I've got the bookmarks up on the Big 12. I mean, that Iowa State got beat, that Kansas State got beat. There are so many things that are uncertain that it's just nuts. And, one thing that's stuck in my head from Chris Klieman's press conference last Tuesday was, again, that they're dealing with stuff they haven't seen, but I liked his answer, when he was asked about, are there things that you're going to do to try and win now? Are you going to get away from, the one who brung you, the one that you danced with? And he said, no, we're going to stick with our philosophy. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And, K-State's going to take some lumps. There's going to be a lot of teams that take some lumps this year. But that's one of the sharpest things I've heard said by a coach in a while, because, this year's a freebie. You get a pass, you get a mulligan, and coaches are going to try some different things, but K-State's not going to get away from itself. And there will be teams that do, but it's just so all over the map right now that I don't think it's going to stop. You're just going to see teams continue to get surprised as the year goes along. I don't think anybody's going to play flawless football all the way through the year. Not Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, not anybody, even the really good teams. I'm curious to see what the SEC produces.
Yeah.
Be it LSU or be it Alabama. Everybody's beatable this year, I think, with maybe the exception of a couple teams.
Trav?
Yeah, I would. I'd kind of lump Oklahoma State in. Obviously with a pretty similar to the Kansas State, and talent wise, and compete pretty well against each other year in and year out. And I mean, I think this whole COVID, I think it hurts teams like Kansas State and teams like Oklahoma State more than, the top 5, top 10 programs in the country. I mean, obviously just, from a depth standpoint, K-State can always find, 2 or 3 guys on offense, 2 or 3 guys on defense, and then some role players. And, you can put together a pretty decent roster that can compete against anyone. But, when you start losing guys left and right, I mean, that depth is always Kansas State's issue, and it's always teams like Oklahoma State's issue, kind of these mid-level teams. And when you start depleting that roster, like it's going to happen this year, I mean, I think that puts those top 25 to 35-ish teams in that range at a huge disadvantage, because, they can coach some guys up and they can plug guys in, but only to a certain extent. And then those top tier, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, even Texas has tons of talent. They can never seem to quite put it all together. But when your third stringer is still pretty darn good, you got a chance. Where Kansas State's, third or fourth stringers are usually young guys that have a lot of work to do. So I think this season puts a huge disadvantage at, let's say, the 25th best team in the country to the 50th best team in the country, kind of that mid-level team, middle of the conference type team, that puts them at a huge disadvantage.
I wanted the Big 12 to bring in an 11th school and just play a round robin with 10 games. I think what happened in the non-conference schedule really damaged the Big 12. I mean, because you look at it, they played 3 Sun Belt teams and lost. Now one of the victories is a mediocre Oklahoma State win over Tulsa. Houston Baptist almost wins at Texas Tech, but that goes down as a win. And in your 3, quote, impressive wins, you beat Missouri State, Eastern Kentucky, and UTEP. I mean, I don't know. The Big 12 had nothing to gain from these games, guys, and everything to lose. And guess what? They lost because they're 5-3 in the non-con. TCU and Baylor haven't even got on the field yet. And I don't think the conference looks very good. I think it damaged itself. And I really wish they had identified another program to bring in for the conference, like Notre Dame to the ACC, for this year alone, and not play all these games, because I suspect in the process a bunch of COVID might have gotten into the conference. And I'm not saying anyone intentionally played people with COVID, but I think there's some indication some guys are playing. If you got a bunch of guys testing positive on Sunday, they were probably positive on Saturday. The incubation seems, the chance of it ending Saturday night, so you're positive on Sunday but not on game day, seems pretty narrow to me that could happen. But here we are. We're finally getting to the conference play, and I'm afraid the conference just isn't going to look good. No matter what they do with each other, people are going to say, yeah, but Oklahoma, did you see who they had to play in the Big 12? They lost to the Sun Belt. Matt, I just think at the conference, there's no way to salvage its reputation with this pandemic season, even if the teams stay healthy and play a bunch of games.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I guess I'm just coming at it from a little different angle in terms of, again, it's a one-off year. Things are changing day to day. That's not going to stop. And, I don't think the Big 12 really needs to worry about that. Just get through this thing and survive. And, hopefully when we get to next summer, next fall, we're talking about much more of what a typical football season is going to be. Again, you're not the Big Ten and you're not the Pac-12 right now, and I surely wouldn't want to be those two conferences. So just make do with what you can. Basketball announced last week, where we found out basketball season is going to start on the 25th. Who knows? The tournaments that typically happen in Hawaii are going to be played in North Carolina. It's just what we're going to see this year will be in the history books for years to come. And just wait. I mean, baseball season, whatever it is. So nothing surprises me. I don't think you need to make a big deal about it. And you hope that there's not a player, whatever the sport may be, whatever the school may be, that dies from this stuff, because that's what's going to take over the headlines, is if something like that happens.
Yeah, Ryan Black, is there any way college basketball starts when they say that it's going to start and continues? I mean, there was a lot of talk about going into bubbles, going to a conference bubble and do it 3 times a year and play 6 games in a 2-week period, 15-day period, whatever it is, retreat to your campuses for a while, come back and play some more. But they're going to go without bubbles and try to just play a regular schedule. And with this winter, what typically happens with flus is, it takes off in the winter. I just don't see how basketball is going to proceed with this plan.
I think they have a better chance on football, though, just because of the fewer number of overall players that you're talking about. I mean, look at the NBA again, and obviously they are in a bubble, but they haven't had, a single player test positive during their time, in the Disney complex. And so, like I said, I think it's just, there's just no way outside of, like you kind of mentioned, having teams in an actual bubble, there's no way that any sport's going to be able to go through a season without any, cancellations or postponements or things like that. Again, and put golf and NASCAR aside, because obviously those are, individual kind of sports more so than team sports that we're talking about. But I would just say I feel a lot more optimistic about basketball's chances of getting through this with fewer bumps, because of just a fewer number of players. I know that's a very simplistic way to look at it, but it's a fact.
Travis, would you like to be locked in a bubble at Disney World for 2 months? I would think this could turn someone into an axe murderer if they're around Disney stuff for 2 months straight.
I mean, if you're going to pay me a couple $1 million, I do a lot weirder stuff than that for a couple $1 million a month.
Tell me about it, brother.
But you saw, who was the headline? I think I don't follow the NBA at all, very little. But there was some, I think it was for Boston, he's missing his daughter's birth. He decided to stay in the bubble. And I don't know, stuff like that is just like, that's mind-boggling to me. It's one thing to sacrifice from your family, go away for 2, 3, 4 months. we know people do that all the time for their jobs. But to, miss a big life event like that, that's when you really put it into perspective of, this is pretty darn serious, and people are taking it seriously and making huge sacrifices to make sure we can, guys like us can cheer for our teams and cover sports like we do. So no, I appreciate all the all the athletes and all the coaches and all the medical staff and everyone else doing everything they can to get these games played, because I know there was that 2 or 3 months there earlier during this pandemic where life was fine, but there was no sports on TV. It was boring. It was horrible. So I'm enjoying it so far. I'm kind of, at the camp with Matt, and I'm just, with the Big 12, we're just thankful to be playing, and the season's kind of going to have a giant asterisk on it anyway. So let's try to find a way to, get OU or Texas into that playoff. But no, it's $2 million in the bubble. Shoot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually have a few other things I want to say real quick.
Okay, go.
You skipped over me on the point about the Sun Belt thing. Was let's not lose sight of the fact that 2 of those 3 losses to the Sun Belt were decisive. Again, K-State had the only quote unquote semi-defensible loss because again they lost in the final minute. But KU and Iowa State were clearly the inferior teams on the field against the Sun Belt, and like I said, so that as a whole doesn't look good for the Big 12. But what I'll say is I think at this point, people on the playoff committee and people nationally, Oklahoma gets the benefit of the doubt of being the class of the Big 12. It's the problem is they've struggled so mightily when they've gotten to the playoff that I think at this point, that's what people think is like, we don't care what Oklahoma does in the regular season. They need to, well, I mean, if not win a playoff game, at least be more competitive, because outside of the loss to Georgia in the Rose Bowl game, they've been pretty much dominated in most of their playoff appearances to this point. So, I mean, I know that's not what people want to hear about the Big 12, but I'm saying that's what the facts are. I mean, the Big 12 has not won. I believe they're the only conference, Power 5 conference, hasn't won a game yet in the playoff. You know, because again, like I said, Oregon did make it to the national title game and lost, and obviously we know about the SEC and we know about Clemson, but the Big 12 has been shut out in its playoff appearances. So I just don't think the perception is going to change about the conference until they get into the playoff and actually make some noise.
I agree. And speaking of Oklahoma, Matt, Kansas State is scheduled to go down to Norman on Saturday. Is there a pathway to victory for Kansas State, or is it even more difficult to predict? You know, I didn't see last year's coming, but I could see them doing it. I just don't see how Kansas State can win at Oklahoma right now, because there were so many issues that you can't solve them all in a 1 or 2 week period.
It's hard to see that pathway, but last week I just remember looking up and Kansas State's up, 21, up 30. So you never know. And again, K-State typically plays pretty well in Norman. They've played Oklahoma in some of their better games down in Norman than they have at home. A lot's going to depend on how I know they're not going to be, but how close K-State is to full strength. Is Malik Knowles available? We don't know who the players are that are either positive or out for contact tracing. Obviously, if there was somebody like Skylar Thompson that's out, that's going to make life that much more difficult. But to me, I just go back to what we talked about after the Arkansas State loss is what strides has K-State made on the offensive line? Who is the center? Is it Ben Adler? And what has Connor Riley been able to get accomplished with those guys in that unit up front? Because if I'm Coach Grinch from Oklahoma, I'm bringing the house. I am bringing the house for 4 quarters, for 60 minutes, and Derek K-State. Part of it again is who's available at wide receiver, because K-State was down a lot against Arkansas in that department. So it's going to be difficult without a doubt. But again, who knows? Maybe Oklahoma has a slew of guys that go out on Wednesday or Thursday, but K-State will have to play incredibly well and get breaks and make breaks to have a chance.
Indeed. And Travis, if Oklahoma wants to come, I hope K-State throws its share of screen passes, and I would throw it to Briley Moore an awful lot. If you want to come all out here, Briley's going to slip by you.
And to Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and that's what – I mean, last year, was K-State across the board better than Oklahoma? No, but they found a way to gut out a victory and played really, really well. And so – and that's my biggest hope. It's one thing when you go out and play well and you lose, that sucks. That means like, hey, we need to go recruit some better guys, or we need to find some better coaches. But when you go out and play poorly and you lose, that always kind of leaves a little bit of hope, in the back of your mind there, which is what happened last week. So hopefully those guys got some things figured out. I think, defensively, I didn't see enough last week defensively, especially from our secondary, to stop an OU. I'm more worried about the offensive line at the beginning of the season than I was about that secondary. So hopefully that was just a fluke where that defense wasn't ready to play. Or maybe they saw some things that they weren't expecting. So, if that defense plays well, which, we got a pretty good front and, pretty good linebacker core, and you keep some guys healthy, if we can slow OU down, a couple turnovers, kickoff return for a touchdown, and next thing you know, it's a 28-24 ball game. Kansas State finds a way to win. So that would be defense has to play lights out, hold Oklahoma, capitalize on their mistakes. But if I'm a betting man, take him Sooners.
Yeah, but Ryan Black, the line came out Oklahoma by 28. 28. And that's a pandemic line right there, man. They're just trying to balance the money and the perception that OU is a lot better. Maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, I think, too, that the line, I'm not saying it would have been 10 points less, but it would have probably been at least a touchdown less if K-State hadn't lost to Arkansas State. So I just think that especially if people didn't watch that game or they didn't watch it closely and you just look at the final score and you're like, oh, man, K-State couldn't even beat a Sun Belt team. Of course, like you said, people are going to assume, well, they're going to go into Oklahoma and just get just blown away like 2 years ago, which was about as big of a mismatch as I've ever seen between two conference teams. I mean, again, I know you guys were around for the long ago K-State teams, but in terms of in my lifetime, it was just so just one-sided in favor of Oklahoma. It was just unbelievable. And obviously, I don't think there's anything close to that Saturday. But, I mean, you guys kind of hit upon all the points is that K-State's going to have to play extremely well in every area, offense and defense. One of those well-timed special teams plays they seem to come up with that wouldn't hurt to have a kickoff return or a punt return or a blocked punt. And, you know, guys, the thing that they did so well last year, which would help them if they could do it Saturday, you guys remember how well they controlled time possession? Yeah. Especially the first two games, it was like Bowling Green and Nichols barely could get on the field. So I just always think that even when you have a school like Oklahoma that has such a quick strike capability, I always think the more you keep them off the field, the better chance that you've got of winning.
Matt, that comes back to that offensive line. That comes back to the offensive line, Matt. They got to block, man. You can't possess the ball if the offensive line is struggling, and hopefully they've sorted some things out there.
I'm sure
Ryan,
they have. Oh, go ahead, Trev.
Sorry, real quick. Ryan, are you from Oklahoma? You got a little bit of an Okie draw there. Where are you from?
No, I tell people I'm from Georgia.
Georgia? All right. Georgia. Back to football.
In college, but like this is my first time living in this part of the country when I got this job. What? Matt, what do you think so funny? I didn't know like that Oklahoma people I didn't know Oklahoma people had like an accent. I've never heard that.
Oh yeah, they don't talk quite like you. They don't talk quite like you, but you've also with your comment a moment ago, you've missed some of the real lopsided matches between K-State and KU over the recent years. But the offensive line.
Well, but you got to remember, in 2018, they needed Delton to score late, and even 3 years ago, Steven Sims had like 200 yards receiving for KU. Now last year, you're right, was a pretty one-sided affair, really. But I'm just saying that I can only speak from 2017 to now. I'm saying I wasn't here for that.
Okay, 2000.
Yeah.
Catfish, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Wait, Travis. So good. I'm glad that you brought up the question for me, Travis. Because I say two questions for you, real quick. One is, you being a former player, could you imagine what it would have been like if you were having to play through just a situation like this with this pandemic, and how different that would have made your career? I
think probably like annoying would be like the best word I could find. It's just like, it's annoying. It's frustrating. It's hard to know. Those guys are probably a little scared, every time they, you go in and take a marijuana steroid drug test, you're scared, and you're going to, test clean on that. And where these tests are, it seems like a coin flip, and guys are testing positive without any symptoms, and you're like, man, I feel healthy, but, I still want to see my girlfriend. And so it's, where do you draw that line of what's, responsible and disciplined and, looking for the team versus also, you can't, quote unquote, live your life in a bubble. So yeah, just annoying would probably be the biggest word I would use, but it'd be hard. It'd be frustrating. And, seasons are hard enough without any of this crap. So to add this would be a whole nother layer of just annoyance and frustration.
How would Bill Snyder have handled all this?
Oh, God.
Oh, geez.
I don't even know how.
I did.
Zoom meetings alone, I don't know how he'd get through this. I don't.
No, I remember I asked a staff member when they went remote, and they were doing everything online and dealing with talking to their players through Zoom and talking with their and recruits through Zoom and everything. And that was the sentiment, was just like, I know Coach Snyder would have tried. He would have done his best. He would have put the people around him, and Sean would have helped him. And probably would have found a way to get it done, but they were just, it's thankfully there was a coach who is used to that technology, because it would have been a whole another hurdle and another layer of complexity just to have a coach, not right or wrong or anything against him, just the era that he's in, he was a very old school paper type guy. To be able to have these digital technologies that were needed just to communicate with your players would have been a whole nother layer of difficulty to add on to the season.
And the fact that he's in a super high risk group.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that as well. I mean, just the fact that he has to be more careful himself because of his age. So yeah, which we haven't seen. Thankfully, it seems like the coaches are being pretty safe. And I remember talking to a strength coach, and they're masked up 24/7, and he was a believer in the mask, because he's like, those strength coaches over the summer, they see every player every single day. He's like, I've been within 5 feet of every single player that's tested positive. And he's like, we're taking tests every other day. And he's like, not one of my strength staff has shown up positive. So he's a believer in some of the precautions they were taking. And two, I mean, going back to, the coaches being smart. I mean, my wife is friends with a lot of the coaches' wives. And, she texted some of them the other day to get together, for coffee. And those coaches' wives are being very cautious as well. They're not really going out. So the like you mentioned, the players, it's hard to get them to not interact with anyone, but the coaches seems like they're doing a really good job of, hey, we have to be very, very careful, because imagine if Coach Mess or Coach Riley or anyone goes down. I mean, it's going to be even harder, or Coach Kleiman for that matter. If Coach Kleiman goes out with a positive test, I mean, that just throws a whole nother wrench into everything. It sounds like everyone's doing their part. It's still just everyone's getting dealt a really tough hand right now.
Well, I appreciate it. You just have such a different perspective. I'm sorry, Matt. Didn't mean to talk over you.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that I appreciate your perspective, because you, again, just have such a different view than the other three of us would have, just having actually played in the program and everything.
Yeah, it would suck. It would not be fun. I mean, it'd be fun because you're still playing football. It's better than practicing all the time, but or lifting weights all the time. But it'd just be, I don't know. It just not ideal by any means. Mm-hmm. But and the two, I mean, high school seniors, I mean, they don't get another round. I mean, I got a brother-in-law that's a high school senior. This is it. And, they're already having issues, and guys tested, and games are getting canceled. So it's not just college football isn't in its own little world, and that's the world we spend most of our time in. But it's affecting a lot of people in a lot of sports and a lot of different age classes. So
Bill Snyder would have coached from a suite all by himself. And Mike Norvell from Florida State's got COVID now, so keep a tally on how many head coaches get it between now and the end of November or so.
And really, that's been my concern, is the coaching staffs, the support staff, the office staff, people that are in a higher risk group than the players. That something could happen. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see if the Big 12 can get in 5 games on Saturday. Does Kansas have a chance at Baylor? KU looked awful. We all accept that. But they did play. They did get a game in. And Baylor's now had 2 games canceled with a new head coach, a new program. Does KU have a shot to win at Baylor?
They have a shot, but they won't win.
There you go.
I mean, you have a theoretical shot anytime you just take the field, but I certainly would not pick them to win.
No, from what I saw, KU put on the field, I mean, they got a long way to go, which they have. They've needed a long way to go for the last, 2-3 years now, and they seem to never be heading in the right direction. So they got a long – Baylor's got enough just pure athleticism that, they'll be fun.
I would think so. But to their credit, Les Miles is loading up on the high school kids, and if they're legit players, a couple years down the road, particularly since this year doesn't count, that helps the programs like KU and K-State that need to reload these rosters. That you'll have a bunch of really young guys not having their experience counted this year. So that's going to be big. Boys, thank you for another collection of our pandemic podcasting. Matt, you look great at the office. You look very professional. That's it for this week's podcast. Much appreciated. We'll be back next week, hopefully after a K-State game, but certainly after some Big 12 games, and we'll have a lot more to talk about on the Insiders Podcast.
PowerCat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street Publishing.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.